Good evening and welcome to Nashville. I'm Alan Jackson. When President Trump published his first book, The Art of the Deal, he was writing about building the Trump Tower, big hotels and casinos in Atlantic City. To do this right, he said you need to think big. Well, 40 years later, he's thinking as big as any world leader can get. He's trying to put together a deal to create peace between Russia and Ukraine. But it's not just two countries, it's the potential for a deal that involves much of Europe and possibly even China. Listen to the president's vision.
We'll do our best to get it ended. And I believe you have two willing parties, and usually that's good news, but two willing parties that want to make a deal. It's possible it might not be able to be done. On the other hand, it's possible it will. It will save thousands and thousands of lives a week. And so it's something we really have to do, and or at least we have to give it our best.
Well, retired U.S. Navy Captain Chuck Nash, he knows what peace looks like. He spent 25 years keeping the peace. Welcome back, Captain.
My pleasure, Pastor.
You know, you heard what the president had to say. It's possible, but it might not be able to be done. He's realistic, but you saw the photo op at the White House. European leaders, the head of NATO, Vladimir Zelensky, working together like never before. But since that extraordinary meeting, the Russians are saying that they also need to be a part of any discussions about security guarantees in Ukraine, and that even China should be a part of that too. So is Putin stalling, lying, negotiating, or is it just all of the above?
I think it's all of the above. He's trying to get as much on the table as possible because you have to have a lot on the table if you're going to be perceived making a deal so you can give some things away. So I think what he's doing is he's trying to stack the deck with a bunch of impossibilities like China. The Ukrainians would never agree, nor would the United States agree, to have China at a peacekeeping table for a war that's taking place in Europe. That's just not going to happen. He's also talking about possibly bringing in the United Nations Security Council. Now, that may have some play in there, but really, I think what's going to happen for Zelensky to agree to give up the territory that his constitution says he's not allowed to do. So he's got that domestic issue. But for him to even get close to that, it has to be an ironclad security arrangement, which means foreign troops on the ground and a snapback agreement that would include military action by those troops should the Russians renege on the deal.
Well, let's get into some of the other details. Putin comes to talk about the potential for peace, and the very next day he's bombing Ukraine again. Is that to try to turn up the heat on Zelensky, or do you think he's trying to secure the territory he's already taken?
Both. I think he's trying to keep maximum pressure on Zelensky to keep him back on his heels. And at the same time, he's trying to solidify his gains so that he's in a strong bargaining position when it comes down to the tripartite meeting. If you look at the frequency of these attacks, drones and missile attacks, they ramped up in April to a max in July. And then over the last several days, there's been a flurry of activity with attacks on Ukraine, not nearly as intense as in June and July, though.
Well, President Trump has made clear that no American troops will ever be deployed on the ground, but he has said that he's open to providing air support for European forces. Is that what's needed to keep Russia in check?
I think so. The Europeans need to step up with boots on the ground if it comes to that, and I think it will. But the United States could play a huge part with air power. And one of the things that I hope is in consideration as the U.S. Air Force is looking at standing down the use of our A-10 Warthogs, that would be the perfect platform to give to the Ukrainians. Transfer them the spare parts, get the training done, and let them have those tank killers. Because if Putin does try to come across again, he's going to do it with armor. And those aircraft were specifically designed to take out armor.
You know, I know you've made the case for a long time now that the battle is something Ukraine was unlikely to ever win because Putin has more troops. Is that still the case, even given the big losses on Russia's side?
It is absolutely incredible how much the Ukrainians have been able to do with what they had going in, which was a slow start with ramp up with military equipment from the Obama administration. When President Trump came in and started providing them with stingers and anti-tank weapons, then that started to turn the tide of the battle. But before that, the Russians had moved in, taken the Donbass region, and all the way down to Mariupol and Kherson, which gives them that land bridge that Putin has always wanted to the Crimea. So when you look at the casualties, it's been abysmal. And the president is absolutely spot on when he says, we just have to stop the killing. The Russians have lost 250,000 killed, another 750,000 amputees and wounded. The Ukrainians have lost probably 100,000 with a little over 300,000 wounded. So this has been bloodshed on a massive scale, even for the Russians. And the Russians have suffering in their DNA. This is 15 times the decade-long war they fought in Afghanistan and 10 times the 13-year war they fought in Chechnya. They have just been grinding up their young men. This has to stop. And I think Putin has suddenly come to that realization that he can't go on forever because the Europeans and the Americans are going to continue to back the Ukrainians, and it's just going to be a meat grinder.
You know, it's easy to understand Zelensky's reservations about giving up territory, but what about the Ukraine families that live in those areas? Are they supposed to just pick up and leave, or do they become Russian citizens? You know, what's the thinking about this?
Well, looking at the demographics of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions, which are collectively called the Donbass, if you look at those, about 90% are ethnic Russian-speaking peoples. So that has always been Putin's thing, just like it was Hitler's taking care of, the German people in Czechoslovakia and elsewhere. Putin has always been saying, I've got to take care of these Russian people because they're not being taken care of by the Ukrainian government. They're being abused. So who's right, who's wrong on this? It doesn't matter. You just got to stop the killing at this point and then sort it out.
Well, President Trump is insisting that Putin will have to meet directly with Zelensky, wherever that happens. Do you agree that that's the way to do it, these two enemies talking face to face?
Eventually, they're going to have to stare at each other across the table. They are, because it's not like the United States can impose its will on either side. The United States can broker that peace. And quite frankly, President Trump is the only one that can do it. If you look at the world leaders on the stage, and they all came to Washington at his invitation to be part of this, to show that kind of unity. And then you look at how the legacy media is treating that. They're treating it as if they came to Washington to back Zelensky and protect him from Trump. It's absolutely absurd what's going on in the media on this side of it. I hope people really take the time to look into what's really going on over there, because this is a crucial, crucial time for the world. If President Trump, can broker this peace and stop this war, it'll be what, war number 5 or 6 that he's solved in the last couple hundred days? Just absolutely incredible. Incredible.
It's unprecedented. Captain Nash, there's a lot more to discuss. Can you stay with us for another segment?
I sure can.
Well, if those of you at home want to share your thoughts on these peace negotiations, you can just go to ajnow.com, and on the upper right side of the page, you'll see a link you can click, and you can send me an email. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be right back. I'd like to extend a personal invitation to join us for our Culture and Christianity Conference. It's September the 19th and 20th on our campus here at World Outreach Church, just outside of Nashville. We've chosen 3 specific topics to explore with a wonderful group of guests. We're going to talk about the church and our expected impact in this culture, the media and their impact in our culture, and then finally, our health, how we can be healthy in the midst of all these competing voices we're hearing. The real goal is how we take our faith and integrate it in our world so we have better lives, stronger families, and strengthen our nation. Join us for Culture and Christianity here in Murfreesboro. We're back now with Captain Chuck Nash, who had a very successful career in the Navy. Some of you may have heard me say this before, but Captain Nash had 965 aircraft carrier landings across his career. That means he brought his fighter jet down on those little runways 965 times on ships that were bobbing up and down in the ocean. We're grateful to you for your service, Captain. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was an honor to serve the country and wear the cloth of the nation.
Well, let's get back to the Trump factor. Senator Lindsey Graham thinks the president has the upper hand in these talks because Putin has seen the other peace settlements that he's already taken care of. Listen to what the senator had to say.
Donald Trump's the only guy on the planet that can end this war. Putin fears Trump, and he's been I think he's been tough. Azerbaijan and Armenia has been going on for 30 years. He ended that war. Pakistan, India, just by force of will. So he's the right guy.
And he's the right guy to allow business to be done with Moscow. So how badly do you think that Putin wants to fire up the economy by making Trump happy with a peace deal?
I would hope that Putin would set aside his ambitions for recreating imperial Russia or recreating the Soviet Union and start to look at a reasonable future. He has in the palm of his hand right now, if he can cut a deal with President Trump and let him broker this peace deal and put peace in Western Europe, the United States and Russia could merge together and really do some incredible things. It would be peace in Europe, and that would set China off on its own and give them pause to what they're really doing. If he doesn't, the president has already said he's going to crush the Russian economy, and he can very easily. All he has to do is tell those who are doing business with the United States, if you want to continue to do business with us, you cannot do business with Russia. And at that point, the Russian economy implodes. It's already in trouble. It's staggering. It would implode. And then what would happen with domestic unrest inside Russia and Putin's grasp on power?
Well, I want to ask you about the China factor. You know, we know that China has helped Russia. China is building up its own military, and China has put out some big objections to President Trump's plan for a strategic missile defense system, similar to Israel's Iron Dome. So do you think that President Trump is right to try to pull Putin away from China as he's working on this peace deal with Ukraine?
Absolutely. It was initially thought, I believe, in the halls of power in Washington, that what would happen is that Nixon's visit to China would bring China into the world economy, and that it would be the United States and China against Russia to outweigh Russia. Now I think those tables have turned, and it's in Putin's opportunity, if he just would, it could be the United States and Russia, and then China would be the outlier. And that would be, for world peace, that would be absolutely huge, because this nonsense of talking about Russia and China teaming up together against the United States, if you look deep into Russian history and into what I call their DNA, their political DNA, their threat has always been from the Far East. Now, of course, Napoleon invaded and Hitler invaded from the West. Yes, I get that. But they were always worried about what they called the Yellow Menace. It was the Chinese, because if you look at where the Russian population is, it's all in the West. They have hardly anything in the East. All of that territory, all those 12 or 13 time zones, most of them are unpopulated, and they're all sitting right above the landmass of China. So if the Chinese wanted to go up and take all those natural resources and take that land, the only thing that they could do is resort to a nuclear confrontation, because they don't have the troops to cover that vast area of land and the mass of the Chinese military.
Well, on the plus side, the general sense in Washington is that because NATO is engaged in the negotiation with Putin and Zelensky, China is unlikely to try to move on Taiwan, at least while President Trump is in office. Do you agree with that thinking?
I absolutely agree that the Chinese will not take kinetic action against Taiwan as long as President Trump is in office. I absolutely agree with that. And that's because they've seen what he's done since he's been back, not just his first term, but since he's been back. There's a whole new sheriff in town. And this is a different administration than that first administration. It wasn't the administration where he fell in on the Washington apparatchiks. No, he's handpicked his people. And if you look at who's running this country now, with the president and his cabinet, solid, really solid. And it's going to be a uniform response. There won't be any bickering. And the Chinese know that when Trump calls the shots, that's the way it's going to play out. And they're scared of that.
Well, Captain Nash, it's really quite striking to witness how much President Trump has accomplished in such a short time. On the border, the economy, crime, cutting government spending, the taxes that we pay. Do you think all of that momentum will serve him well in trying to get Putin and Zelensky to put down their weapons?
I think so, because that's the other thing that now that you bring that up, it's an important point. Because these foreign adversaries have to look at it and wonder, is this just Trump acting alone, or does he have the domestic political support that he needs to carry through on this? And he does. He now has the domestic political support to where it's not just Trump acting alone with his handpicked cabinet. No, the American people are behind him. They're seeing what's happening. Look at what's happening just in D.C. over the last week or so. You know, crime is way down. They found out they were fudging their crime statistics to make it look like it wasn't so bad. And now the people in D.C. are happy. The only people who are protesting are the paid protesters that are camped out at the railroad station on Capitol Hill. Other than that, the people are happy that they're cleaning up the streets of Washington. Well, he's not going to stop there. Like we talked about in the first segment, he's already solved 4 wars, shut down a 35-year war that was going on. So cleaning up the streets of D.C., that's chump change compared to what he's got planned for bringing peace to the rest of the world.
Well, Captain Nash, thank you for joining us today. You always bring clarity to confusing circumstances.
My pleasure, Pastor. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your summer. Hope to see you again soon. In a moment, I'll share my sense of hope in all this. We can get to a better place. I'll be right back. Hey, I want to give you a personal invitation to join my podcast, Culture and Christianity.
For a person to think that the Bible is not political, you don't know the Bible.
We're trying to understand how to take our faith outside the walls of the church and live it out in the marketplace.
He will show you what to do, whether it's in our communities, in our country, or other places in the world.
So I brought in some friends, some people that are trying to do this.
How could anyone call themselves Christian and be pro-choice? Is beyond my comprehension.
But I think he wanted them open and in need of him every day.
We have been living through a season of unprecedented deception, propaganda, manipulation.
Everybody says, Israel is attacking schools in the Gaza Strip.
I want to be a part of seeing culture and Christianity intersect. Hope you enjoy the podcast. When the Ukraine war first began, for several weeks I was on Zoom calls with leaders in the Christian community in the Ukraine. It was tragic to hear the stories of the civilian populations being targeted, the residential buildings that were being decimated by rocket fire. You know, here in the United States, we think about war differently. It's almost like it were a video game. It doesn't really feel real to us. Well, consider this for a moment. More than 2.5 million homes across Ukraine have been damaged or destroyed. According to the United Nations, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has forced 10 million Ukrainians to flee their homes, with over 3 million displaced within the country and 7 million Ukrainians displaced abroad. Just imagine what this war has done to the children of Ukraine, how it's affected them emotionally, upended their educations. So many deaths on the battlefield on both sides. The war is Russia's deadliest conflict since World War II. You know, there's not a solution that's going to make everybody happy, but the bloodshed and the warfare, it needs to stop. So I'm thankful for the grown-up voices like President Trump that are saying we have to bring a resolution to this conflict. And I believe you and I have a role to play. We can pray. We can ask God in His mercy to let the participants be willing to negotiate a conclusion. Prayers matter. Let's be a part of the solution and not just complain about the politicians. If we'll do that, there's more reasons for hope than despair, I promise. We'll be right back with your emails. Thank you for taking the time to send us your emails. They are always a highlight for us. Rhonda from Indiana wrote in, I'm watching the episode now with a border agent from Arizona, Art DeQueto, and my heart is just breaking hearing all of this. I'll pray for Art, his men, and the children who did not ask for this injustice. May God protect them all. Well, Rhonda, we will join you in those prayers and thank God that we have secured our border and we brought some common sense back to the immigration question. It is a safer place. What we've been doing in the previous years was not compassion. Sue K. from Cedar Falls, Iowa emailed, as I listened to all the information regarding the Russian collusion, has there been any feedback from the Russians? I mean, this has been going on for years, and I wonder if Russia has ever responded to accusations one way or the other. Thank you for your program and all you do. God bless you. Well, Sue, I don't know the answer to that officially, but I suspect the Russians have been delighted to imagine they were contributing to chaos in America. And they had to have some good laughs at the feckless nature of our legacy media and their willingness to tell the lies and ignore the truth. God help us. Melanie in Tennessee asked, after watching the episode with guest Representative Warren Davidson, all I can say is, wow, I'm watching today's episode and there are so many issues I didn't realize. Where can my husband watch this episode after work? Well, Melanie, I'm glad you asked. You can always go to ajnow.com. There's a full archive of all the programs there. You can see any show you missed or share it with a friend. That'll help us all. Well, I'm Alan Jackson. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us, and I pray you have a wonderful evening.